Okay, my number 6 game on my list is Codenames by Vlada Chvátil, who's definitely from the Czech Republic and not America.
Didn't you say that they didn't want to call it the Czech Republic anymore?
Well, yeah, they want to call it Czechia, so they're pub fact for the day. So anyway.
Why did you think he was American?
Well, I just assumed that maybe he could have been an immigrant. But anyway.
Right.
Tom, what is
following Gary Smith's suggestion, I'll do a 60-second overview of actually what the game is before we discuss it. So in Codenames you will have 2 teams, a red and a blue team. Though in each of those teams there will be a spy master, and the rest of their team will be spies. The spy masters will sit next to each other and can see a card that will reveal which of the 5x5 grid of secret agent names in the middle belong to each of their teams. So these names range from suitably cool spy names like Agent Grasshopper and Agent Snowman to Shelf and Lap.
Yeah.
There are
Agent
hundreds of cards in the box, so it's So it's always different. We'll look, and we'll try and think of clues that will link the individual words, and you'll give a 1-word clue with a number. So, for instance, if I said tree 2, then you might be like, oh, well, trees are green, so I'll point at that, and if they're right, oh, that was one of our agents, you get it. And if they're wrong, let's say they picked bark, because they thought trees have bark, but I had thought of bark as in dog, and that was actually one of the other teams. People are like, they get an agent, and then it's their turn. First team to guess all their agents wins, but there is one card that is the assassin, and if you ever pick that one, as happened 2 times with you in charge, the last time we played, then your team instantly loses. Mm-hmm. So that's Codenames, playable from weird rules of 2 to 3, normal rules 4 up.
The reason
4-year-olds and older.
The reason I like this game is that it's one of those ones where it's a general deduction game again. So obviously I had Mysterium on my list as well before. That's finding a nice, interesting deduction element to it. It's all to do with pictures, whereas this one's got nice word association to it as well.
You should probably save the people from commenting and going, hey, did you know there's a Codename Pictures?
There is also a Codename Pictures, so yes, you can play that.
Have you played that yet?
No, I haven't played that, but I know that it was at the UK Games Expo.
So it was. We played it. Yeah. It is good. Yeah.
But I think the thing that sets this apart slightly is obviously it's got the team element in it, so there's that thing going on there.
Rather than Mysterium, which is co-op, and Dixit, which is versus.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And as well, I think it's the almost funny edge that you get when you play Codenames compared to something like Mysterium or Dixit, which people tend to take a little bit more seriously, I guess you'd say, because I'm trying to work out what's in this, and you don't tend to joke too much about the answers that are given and things like that. Whereas in Codenames, I think it's got a little bit more of a funny edge to things. So it's where, people are trolling each other and coming up with silly words and things like, so definitely the Russians were those people that went to the beach and things like that.
I wonder if that's just our group. You know what I mean? I wonder if other groups, like we taught it to another Ben recently, and it was like a point where because you'd been the spy master for the first 2 games, and then in the other game you were sitting there and we were trying to work out, and you were like, well, you could and doing like all the jokes, and Ben was like, can you do that? Can you just wind them up? And it's that's the pleasure of the game.
I think that's something that would come naturally from groups playing it for a long time and maybe developing a bit more of a meta like we have, where I think sometimes you'll judge things and you'll try and think outside the box in terms of certain.
I wonder though if some groups do take it more seriously. Do you know what I mean? And that would be like.
Yeah, I can totally see some groups taking it much more seriously.
Yeah,
and because obviously once the spy masters have given their clue, they're not allowed to say anything, and really the spy masters are only really allowed to give the clue and confer with each other.
Yeah, like it can actually be quite hard sometimes when like someone says, well, unicorns are extinct, and you laugh at that as the spy master. Really, you shouldn't do that because you are saying that's not what I meant. But
I can totally see other groups, taking that approach of right. The spy masters aren't allowed to say anything. The other team aren't allowed to say anything either on. Yeah. Or they're allowed to. You're allowed to talk about past clues, but you're not allowed to talk about
I reckon that would make it more of a game and less of a party game.
I think the thing that makes it is that I generally think you had to inject a little bit of fun into this, because in terms of like how I came to viewing Codenames, it's a little bit like those 2 spies sitting on the bench saying, the crow flies at midnight from the mast of the ship on the road or something like that. It's that kind of thing. It's that kind of spirit of things going
Cold
on.
War.
Cold War era style
funny
spy.
Cold War.
But then giving almost that edge of Archer and things to it as well,
Yeah,
so that people start to laugh at it and have a bit of fun with it. And I think that's one of the things that really draws me to it, in that it doesn't usually take that long to play. Maybe about sort of half an hour.
It has got a good length. Yeah.
So it fits in quite nicely. You've got that nice rotation where people are wanting to switch around, and maybe one person will be the spy master and things like that.
Like we said with Mysterium, with the ghost and the
And I generally think it's one of those games where you don't feel, you feel pressure, but you don't feel almost that intenseness as you would have in some games where you're the one trying to guide many.
Do you think? Oh, so go on.
Well, for example, like if you're playing something like this, I know it's a very big leap, but say you're playing something like Descent and you're the guy that has to play the dungeon master, you can suddenly feel a bit more pressure and you don't really know how to play it and things like that. Whereas in this, I think it's actually quite an easy fit to slip into the spy master role, because I never really wanted to play that role to begin with. I was perfectly happy being one of the agents and picking all the names and things. But when I actually did get to play as the spy master, I really enjoy it, and I love the idea of trying to fit words together, and that moment where you go, fantastic, I've got it. I've managed to work out
that
ways
eureka moment
to avoid the assassin, give them 3 clues at once and things like that. Yeah. And it actually has a little bit of an element of tactical sort of knowledge in there as well, where you have to think sometimes, well, if I give 1 clue now, maybe I'll be able to fit in 3 clues later. Will I wait until the other spies have actually managed to cover a couple more up, so it's a little easier to make my clues and things like that?
That's definitely one of the things, like, while we said earlier that like the other team not talking would make it more of a game and less of a party game, even playing it the way we play it, like I'll often, like, we'll all say like tactical things during the game, like on the first turn, I often won't want to make, unless it's 100% certain, I often won't, I'll go 1 guess under to sort of hold back the clues, because you can catch it up later. You know, like I really, really like that strategy, and it really upsets me when I'm playing with somebody who doesn't play that way and instead will like, oh, you didn't get that one. I'll give you another clue that includes it. It's like, no, don't do that. Cover some new ground and leave some. I like the vagaries of it, because it's not usually hard to pin down 1 card.
No.
But once you get to 2, like it's like 1 easy, 2 you'd have to say pretty much average. 3 very good, 4 probably lucky.
Once you get to 3 and 4, you're starting to link things together with a little bit more tenuous nature.
And that was another interesting thing watching new Ben learn the game. Was him being like, oh, none of these link together, and it's like, but you have to get, like I think Claire said, like you have to get into the person's head that's giving the clue, and you also have to remember you're playing Codenames. You know, it's not like normal word association where if I said wall, well, there might be tons of things you'd think of before prison. But if prison's on the table, suddenly now, out of 25 words, that's actually quite a close association.
It's like Codenames is a very inventive game, and while it effectively takes a lot of really old parlour game sort of mentalities and things like that, and the game feels like it could actually be a game that came out in what, like the 50s and the 60s.
There's no reason this could have been made in the Depression.
I mean, this game.
With some really tasteless, like cards that like, and it'd be like, oh god, like in old editions of the game, it had some really offensive stuff.
Because I mean, considering it's just won the Spiel.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
I mean, but it doesn't really do anything new. In terms of games, as Ben said, it draws on a lot of parlour games. Like it's just a well-designed game that can get into that's easy to get into. It's not like, and it's not groundbreaking. I wouldn't say.
No, it's not. It's not groundbreaking in the sense of like if you look at something like Pandemic, which didn't win it, but like that's groundbreaking. And it wasn't the first co-op, but it was the first co-op like that really exploded that, and that created a genre. Dominion, I think Dominion won it on the same year as Pandemic, and Dominion created the deck building genre. This isn't going to create anything new, but maybe one of the reasons that this won the Spiel is because we had like the party game genre had like that. If you wanted to be nice, you could call it a renaissance. You probably call it a revolution because of Cards Against Humanity. And people wanting to play these sort of games, and you know, Cards Against Humanity obviously has a negative reputation.
Whereas this game easily accessible. It has the feeling of it's got a bit of an Archer thing to it, so people who watch Archer would be interested in playing the game. I think one of the other things that really stands in its favour is it's got a lot of replayability. Because not only have you got those massive stacks of cards, that everybody will interpret slightly differently anyway.
The combinations.
The way that you can flip them over, and
Yeah,
then obviously you've got the little tiles
I mean-
that you get, which can be done in different rotations, which will then add to the amount of things you can do with the
I
card.
know it's not infinite, but I feel like it must be verging on infinite if you count up every possible position of card with every possible location, with every possible rotation, with every possible other side. You've got to be talking in the quintillions of like an impossible number.
Yeah, it's a
Considering that supposedly a deck of cards is never ever in the same order ever again or whatever, this is just beyond.
Yes.
Like, even if you compare it to something like Dixit, where there's lots of, like in our Dixit we've got lots of cards, but you might see that card and think, I remember that clue that someone gave for that.
Yeah.
I could give that clue. You cannot do that in Codenames.
Because of the way that the grid's set up and stuff. I mean, one of the things that I'd say counts against it and doesn't put it as highly in my list is that sometimes I feel like a round can drag. One of the things
there's a lot of downtime.
Like there's a lot of weight in saying, think about what you're going to do on the other person's turn, because obviously the spy master doesn't have to do anything. When other people are talking.
That's true.
But I genuinely think that even then, it's actually quite hard to come up with clues some of the time to make it effective, and so you can have periods of time where 5, maybe 6 minutes, 8 minutes pass before the spy master gives a clue.
Yeah.
And that can be a drag, and if you're going to be playing it in a very serious manner, then I think that might be a stale note on a game experience. But if you are going to inject humour into it and play it with a bit more of a spin and things like that, I genuinely think that kind of levels it out a bit. So like having a fun element to it means that the downtime between people picking answers and giving them and stuff can be equalled out.
So when it is number 6 on your list, so when would you play this?
I like this as a sort of, if other people come around and they don't really play games too often, you play something like this. It's a good sort of...
Well done, Spiel the Generous.
It's a good step up from something like Dixit or like a smaller game.
Or
Cards Against Humanity, or even something like some of the smaller stuff like Skull and Roses and things like that, which are very, very much intro games effectively, because they've drawn a lot more of the sort of typical tabletop bluffing elements and card games.
Yeah, that could have been in poker
like and things like what's the dice game called now? Liar's Dice, but Perudo and things. I think this is a nice step up, but it's not a full board game, so it's not. But it's enough to get that sort of mental acuity going. You're starting to think about different things, linking and all that kind of stuff as well. So I think it helps maybe as a graduation game from sort of playing casually to playing properly. I think, but
I like playing this with bigger numbers.
Bigger numbers.
Alec will only give clues of a certain size.
Exactly.
5 or more, baby.
I mean, 4 players, it's okay. But I think 6 and upwards.
Well, how many did we played it with?
6
players, and I think that felt really good because everybody feels like they're contributing.
Yeah.
The Spy Master doesn't feel like they're losing out and stuff like that. I think it's a good rotation. You play 3 games over an hour and a half. Something like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say if there was to ever be like a competitive scene, I'd almost say 4 would be a very good number because one to give the clue, one to guess, that works very well. Yeah. But obviously when you want it to be, and I think as it is designed to be, much more friendly and open, like 6+. 6+, because then you got 2 people discussing each clue, and that works very well. There's nothing as well to almost make it be Spy Master against Spy Master.
No. So
if you almost want to eradicate some of that downtime for the team that aren't guessing at the moment, there's nothing to say. Well, if you've got 5 of you, you've got your 2 Spy Masters and 3 people are on every team.
That's the 3-player variant, isn't it?
Yeah,
You've got 2 Spy Masters and 1 person
right.
Spy
Yeah.
I guess if you're thinking about it, it just then means that there's a few more ways to play the game if you wanted to mess around.
If you wanted to, you could.
But I generally think, as we say, 6-player works well. 2 Spy Masters.
Yeah, and 6-player because we played it New Year's Eve with
about 9
of us. Yeah,
I think that worked really well as well. I mean, there was still
there were 9.
9.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, because there was not a team.
There was 3 on
there were
the
9.
island.
Yeah, there were 9. Yeah.
Yeah, but good game.
Cool.
Yeah. What about you?
Awesome. Yeah. Anytime.